Hello and welcome back to the Dugout podcast. This is episode number 65. And today I'm obviously joined by my usual co host, Ethan Barlow, to go over the international break. Obviously, a positive international break for Scotland, 2 wins. Positive on paper. We'll get into that more. There's a lot of talk about the way we played and also Steve Clarke in general. And obviously, we'll be speaking about the ongoing Rangers managerial search. Steven Gerrard turned Rangers down, so we'll get into that. And then the other potential candidates that have come to light, some new names since we last spoke as well. So there's a lot to go over today. But first of all, Ethan, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. It was, I think, nice, and I do like this international format that gets the qualifying campaign over and done so quickly in the span of 2 months. And but the performances and the watching those two Scotland games weren't the best, but ultimately we've got the points we needed and put ourselves in a really good position. Still a massive task ahead in those last two games. But yeah, I'm doing well. How's yourself?
I am not bad. I'm not bad. I'm similar to you. Happy we've got the points. Happy we're in this, good position. It's strange because I'm happy and not happy at the same time because if you'd asked me, before, would you take sitting on 10 points after 4 games only behind on goal difference? I would have bit your hand off. But, with the performances, it's bittersweet, I think you would call it. And yeah, we'll just start off on the Greece game, a 3-1 victory for Scotland. Greece weren't great, but they probably were the better of the two teams because Scotland were really poor. They couldn't, get anything going forward, which sounds weird because obviously they scored 3 goals, but it was a bit of a freak result, a fluke victory, you could say. Three, scrappy goals Scotland got in the end.
Yeah, it's just a result that it seems like only this Scotland side at the minute could get. I thought Scotland were terrible in the match, to be honest, especially in the first half. Really sat off Greece and allowed them to work themselves into the game. They didn't have too many clear-cut chances in that first half, apart from the Pavlidis chance after a couple of minutes where all he had to do was pretty much get a contact on the ball and he puts it in, but he just couldn't get enough on it. And it probably would have been a completely different game if he scores that. But then Greece did get their goal, but Scotland done well and showed a lot of resilience to get back into the game. So you've got to give them credit with that. But the performance was really poor, and we were really lucky to get even a draw probably on the night, but a win, especially and score 3 goals. I really didn't see that coming with how we performed on the night.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember texting you. Um, we went 1-0 down, and my iPlayer had died. So I didn't see it, and then we were talking about how rubbish we've been. You were at work, but I think you caught about half an hour or something, and then I got the notification from FotMob, and I just texted you back 1-1. It was a pretty quick response from Scotland, and I couldn't believe that we'd got back into the game, loaded the iPlayer up again, and then a few minutes later we were ahead. Uh, and yeah, it was unbelievable. And we still we still weren't great in the game at all. Uh, and then we get our third goal through Lyndon Dykes. One of the best goals I've ever seen. No, it was disastrous from the Greece goalkeeper. I think he was trying to keep it from going for a corner. Um, and he, palms it out. Lyndon Dykes latches onto it. I thought he was going to miss with the way he hit it. He nearly missed, but he puts it into the open net for 3-1 and sort of grabs the victory for Scotland, seals the victory rather. One, I think, key talking point I think we should talk about, and we can relate this to Celtic as well, is the save. that Angus Gunn made in the 92nd minute, 93rd minute, I think, from what's his face? Karetsas.
I think it was, yeah, I think it was. Correct, Sash, yeah.
Karetsas, beautiful play from him coming in from that right hand side. A shot that looked destined for the top corner and Gunn tips it over. Really good save from him. But why I wanted to bring this up and sort of relate it to Celtic, Ethan, was I saw a report saying that because Kasper Schmeichel's future's still uncertain, Celtic might need to look to other options. And apparently, because Gunn is fallen down the pecking order at Forest, he is there only on a 1 year deal. He would be interested in joining Celtic the following season. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think he was a goalkeeper that was linked with Celtic before they bought Kasper Schmeichel in at the start of a few seasons ago now. But I they might go for him. I'm not sure, but I think that it's obvious that Kasper Schmeichel's coming at the end of his career playing at what you Celtic should call the elite level of the Champions League. Obviously not in the Europa League this season, but yeah, I think they do need to get a goalkeeper in the summer. Angus Gunn, as you said, I think his contract's up at Forest in the summer, although he did say he wants to move away before then in January if he can, because he's fell down to third choice goalkeeper and not had any minutes at all. So, yeah, I think it is one that could happen. I don't think it will. I think Celtic will probably go elsewhere, but he's shown in recent Scotland games that he's done what he's needed to do with a team in front of him that largely performance-wise haven't, but he's been on his toes, and I think he's one of the players of this camp that you can maybe give pass marks to, certainly performance-wise. And I know it's difficult to say when we picked up 6 points from six, but as we'll get on to talking about
Oh,
yesterday's game as we record this, the win over Belarus, it was really, really hard to watch against a really poor side.
yeah, definitely, definitely. But just on Gunn, and when I saw that report, I thought it was interesting. One of the main criticisms of Kasper Schmeichel this season is he's lost his ability to play out from the back. I don't think Angus Gunn could do that at Celtic. If you look at his career, he's never really been in a team that plays like that, if you know what I mean. Maybe um, Norwich, sort of, when they were up fighting for promotion and getting promoted and stuff like that, but he's never really been in that position. So I don't think he would suit being in a ball dominant side where the goalkeeper probably would see a lot of the ball and is sort of, well, although we don't know who's going to be the Celtic manager next season, but I'd
Yeah.
with the way football is going, I'd probably it's a safe bet to say the goalkeeper would be required to be sort of proficient in playing out from the back.
Yeah, yeah, definitely agree with that, and it's the way that probably Celtic want to play. And this season, especially, a lot of the passes have been between Celtic's goalkeeper and centre half. So I think they've obviously got to place a lot of stock in that.
Or Celtic's goalkeeper in the opposition.
Yeah, yeah, on a few occasions, yeah. I think the long term target was maybe, or the long term idea was maybe to give Uljami Sinisalo the chance to be the first choice at some point. He's shown promise. Whether he's going to be able to take that step to be the number one goalkeeper is yet to be seen. But he's seems like a decent enough goalkeeper, shot stopping wise and sort of on the ball wise. But obviously Celtic will want to bring someone in if they're losing the experience in the body as well of Kasper Schmeichel, because obviously you have three goalkeepers and then you go down to two, then you're obviously going to bring someone in. And I don't imagine they're going to bring in like a third choice. I think that's sort of Ross Duan's role.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Celtic do regardless.
Would you like to see Sinisalo given the opportunity from now and see what he can
Yeah,
do?
yeah, I think he probably deserves a chance because of how Kasper Schmeichel's been playing. I don't think Brendan Rodgers will take him out the team though, but because obviously it's a very difficult decision to take. It's almost like taking your captain out of the starting 11 in a way because the goalkeepers are one of one possession. And if you're getting taken out, it can't be really mistaken as a tactical tweak or anything else. It's pretty much you're not playing good enough, so someone else is getting the job. And I know maybe that's needs to be done, and sometimes that's the ruthless nature of football. But as we've seen, and especially with our national team, sometimes performances don't mean anything when it comes to the manager's thoughts.
Yeah, and that takes us nicely back to the national team. Obviously, um, there's been a lot of talk about that. I don't, and there's a few players that I think have underperformed recently for Scotland. One in particular that I don't think he's had a great start to the season, although he did score last night, and he scored on the opening day for Napoli. Since he's sort of cracking season last season, leading Napoli to the Scudetto, Scott McTominay hasn't made a great start to the season. He doesn't look like the player of last season so far.
Yeah, quite possibly, and I don't know if that's maybe a good thing for him because there's less pressure on him at Napoli because obviously last season he was without doubt the main man, Serie A player of the season, obviously nominated for the Ballon d'Or, and like he was at Scotland, he was the main sort of guy to get you a goal. Where now they've got Rasmus Højlund from Man United who started the season very well for both club and country. Unfortunately for us, who will obviously have to go up against Denmark in the last game of the group, and obviously Kevin De Bruyne as well. So I don't know if maybe the sort of sharing the responsibility a little bit, and it's maybe taking him out the limelight a little bit. But I don't think the performances have been as good either, as well as the numbers. So yeah, maybe that is a little thing to be considered. Obviously, as well, just looking at some of the main players in the Scotland team, Aston Villa didn't start the season very well, although they've kind of found form now. John McGinn's found form. He got a couple of goals in the space of a couple of matches quite recently. So, yeah, hopefully the players all hit form because I think the next two games are going to be the most difficult. Well, it will be the most difficult camp of the three so far, or the three in total, actually. And regardless of how well we've done against Greece and Denmark in those previous games, we'll need to up the levels from this camp to see any points. I would say because if we play like we did on Sunday night, especially, then Greece and Denmark will beat us comfortably.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to go back to McTominay for a second because I read an interesting article saying that basically saying that the introduction of Kevin De Bruyne has hurt Scott McTominay's position in the team because De Bruyne's doing all the stuff that McTominay was doing last season, and obviously Kevin De Bruyne, even though his legs have maybe gone a little bit, he doesn't lose that ability. On the ball, one of the greatest midfielders of all time. I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. And yeah, I saw an article saying because De Bruyne's come in and sort of taken on that role, McTominay's role in the team is maybe a bit further back in terms of on the pitch.
Yeah, I think quite possibly that. I think the one I was seeing was that he was kind of being forced out wide and at times as well, which is obviously not where he's really his best placed. But obviously, if you sign a player like Kevin De Bruyne, as you said, they're going to have to try and accommodate to him more. And I think Scott McTominay is in general just a more versatile player in that way, where he can be sort of moved about the team. And although he's maybe not going to be the star of that Napoli team, they've started the season well in Serie A, and that's the main point. And as a manager, like Conte, he's not looking at the sort of interests of his players. He's looking at the interests of the team as a whole, and
Yeah.
it seems to be benefiting them at the moment. So, but as long as Scott McTominay can keep up that sort of talismanic figure for Scotland, and I think we'll all be happy. And he did last night because his goal was absolutely massive at the time of the game. And I know it sounds stupid to say playing against a team like Belarus, but it really was the difference in the end.
Yeah, definitely it was. It was. Another player who I didn't think was great last night in particular, but has seemed to have won over Antonio Conte this season after he was decent last season, but he struggled to break into sort of the starting 11 as Billy Gilmore as well. I know we will talk about the games more in depth, but I think there are interesting talking points about individual players. Billy Gilmore this season, obviously, he's scored his first senior club goal against Pisa, and he seems to be playing some good stuff out in Italy. Obviously, Napoli challenging for the Scudetto again. I think they currently sit top. AC Milan were up there. I think they dropped points after they beat them. And I think it's a goal difference thing that Napoli are currently top of the Serie A. I'm not 100%. I should probably. Well, I've got a
Yeah,
few.
yeah, yeah. Napoli. You're right. Napoli are ahead of Roma on goal difference and 2 points ahead of Milan, 3 points ahead of Inter and Juventus. So very tight at the top of Serie A. Of course, only 6 games in though, so that's very early. But yeah,
Serie A
Napoli.
always looks like that at the start, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a very tightly contested league, and it's very hard to call because even though Milan aren't in any European competition this season, that obviously benefited Napoli last season, and you could see that them going very far. But obviously, and Juventus and Napoli will throw their names in that with some of
But
the best
LeBron
squads in
James
that
in
league.
soccer is playing out of his skin.
Yeah, yeah, he is. Serie A Player of the Month, wasn't he? So yeah,
Yeah,
shows how well he's been playing.
yeah. Um, sorry, I keep thinking about stuff, and I know we will get back to Scotland. This is totally left field, but this has come to mind because I think he's on for League One Player of the Month. A guy who made his last France appearance like 4 or 5 years ago. Um, Florian Thauvin has come back into the France national team, and he seemed in his older age, Ethan, he seems to have found a new lease of life.
Yeah, they went to Mexico with Tigres, I think it was,
Yeah,
and that looked like he was kind of sort of slowing down, and now he's come back to Europe. I think was he in Italy last season?
yeah, he was with Udinese last season.
Then obviously signed for Lons this season, and he's been really good there. Got back with the national team in the recent camp and got a goal as well.
Yeah, that's one thing as well that we can maybe tie into uh, the talk today. Did Didier Deschamps chooses players on merit, no matter what, no matter where they are, no matter if he's one of their favourites. He chooses players if they're playing well. Remember Klaus a few years ago at Lawn as well, who got his call up, playing really, really well. No matter where they are, if they're playing well, Didier Deschamps will choose them. Whereas Steve Clarke, as we all know, chooses his favourites time and time again. One man, though, who I thought was is one of Clarke's favourites, I'd say, but I think over the course of the 4 games, I spoke about this in the Scottish Football Zone. I think he's probably been one of Scotland's best players. Some of the best stuff I've seen from him in a Scotland shirt. He also scored last night. Has been Shea Adams.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that, and he was one of the players that I'd say got pass marks last night because, I think the commentators actually gave him man of the match, and I would completely agree because although he wasn't great, he wasn't excellent by any means, but he scored the goal, he ran about, nearly won a penalty, had another goal that obviously it was offside, but might have hit his hand. It was pretty inconclusive anyway. He was the only player that I thought of and went, yeah, he put in a good shift tonight, and that shows that although I think the team as a whole is playing really poorly, that he's one of the players stepping up, and I think you could say that for the last international break as well. I thought he was quite decent against Denmark, if I remember correctly, and obviously he scored in the reverse fixture against Belarus, and he was pretty decent in that game as well. So Yeah, I think he's probably been Scotland's best player across this qualifying campaign, and I don't know. I don't want to say that maybe shows where Scotland are because I think Shea Adams is a decent player, um, can obviously be a player used to Steve Clarke's benefit as he has done with the goals he scored. I think the only thing that he gets accused of is scoring against the sort of lesser nations.
Yeah.
Obviously, he did have that massive goal against Denmark at Hampden, if I remember correctly. That hopefully, if he can,
We'll take a repeat of that, eh?
yeah, exactly, we'll take a repeat of
Him
that.
and John Suter back again.
Yeah, we'll take a repeat of that scoreline definitely. And yeah, I think that is maybe something that he could sort of add to his game, getting goals in those bigger fixtures. But at the end of the day, if he's not getting the service, then it's always going to be difficult. And the Scotland team have just struggled to score what? Score goals in general recently. And I think the stat that I was looking at before the game last night was that Scotland hadn't scored 4 goals in a competitive match since June 2022. And you think of some of the teams that played, like Belarus and other sort of lesser nations, that they haven't managed to sort of really win in emphatic fashion. And I think that's the way that Steve Clarke's teams kind of are. They get the job done. It's never sort of extravagant, but last night it wasn't getting the job done. It was scraping past a team that you really shouldn't be scraping past. Looking at the results they've had in the other two games against the other two teams in the group, where they were thrashed by Greece and Denmark. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think we've always tolerated the style because you could see that we were playing well also.
yeah,
But recently we haven't been playing well and it's still been this negative, horrid style. Obviously, we've switched to a four, which we've been calling out for quite a while. Um, but he seems to have just stuck with the same sort of tactics as he did with the five at the back, but done it with a four. And what was absolutely mental to me last night, especially the commentators picked up on it as well. When you're playing Belarus and you're playing a 4-2-3-1, why are do you have both your defensive midfielders actually sitting the whole game? If you know what I mean, you
yeah.
know that was absolutely crazy to me because if you watched it, Kenny McLean and Billy Gilmore, Kenny McLean, that's a whole other conversation we can get onto, but Kenny McLean and Billy Gilmore were both sitting the whole game. Basically, Gilmore went forward a couple of times, something he's not really known for. Kenny McLean can get forward, but his overall performance was shocking. Uh, and yeah, the Greece game, we were all buzzing because we were thinking, oh, I can't believe we've lucked this, we've fluked this. We weren't very good, but we came away with a 3-1 victory against, the second most threatening team in the group to us. Really good result. Let's get on to Sunday and get a good result against the 100th ranked team in the world. Uh, and Belarus uh, caused problems, major problems. I spoke about it last night. The direct balls over the top. Um, what else? Just they were popping it about as well at points, and you're thinking, who's this we're playing? Belarus, or like I don't know, like the Netherlands or something. I couldn't believe it that Scotland were letting them play that way. And I don't know if the players were caught off guard because, to be fair to the Belarusians, they did come out and have a go. I think they just thought, well, we've been battered every single game, so why not? Apart from obviously the other Scotland game, but every other game that they've been battered, so they thought, why not? Let's have a go. And, the team as a collective looked like a deer in the headlights. They really, really struggled. And Ethan, I know you've got a lot of points about how bad Scotland's press was as well.
Yeah, exactly that. The press was, I think the press was non-existent, and you can say that Scotland going up against a team like Belarus, you shouldn't need any tactics. You should just be able to throw those Scotland internationals out, and they should be able to beat Belarus. That's what it looked like last night. It didn't look like there was an actual plan of how to close down and make it difficult for the opponents. And Belarus were on easy street, especially in the second half at points, and they just passed it round Scotland at their will and created some big chances. I had some of the stats here to sort of illustrate how bad it really was from Scotland. The most possession Belarus have had in any of the other matches in this group by 9%, which may not seem like a lot, but for possession it is quite a lot. They had more expected goals than Scotland across the 90 minutes. They had the same number of attempts, 22, as the other three fixtures combined. They had more non-penalty expected goals than the other three games combined, because the only other goal they managed in the group was a penalty against Greece. So this is a really poor team. As you said, 100th ranked in the world. Shouldn't disrespect them because they turned up and they did play well and deserve to take something from the game, at the very least a point. And it just was so poor from Scotland. They never had any intensity in the game whatsoever. And yeah, they just lacked that real sort of willingness to go and really win the game and sort of maybe help the Scotland goal difference equation, because they could have sort of narrowed it to Denmark. I know they've still to play Belarus again, and they'll probably put 5 or 6 past them again, because Denmark are a good team that can blow teams away, as we've seen with both of their games against Greece, as well as the first tie against Belarus, which makes our result against Denmark look even better in hindsight now. But yeah, it was just embarrassing. The first 10 minutes, Belarus had 3 corners, just crazy to think about. And I was speaking on the Scottish Football Zone actually yesterday, the pre-show, saying that Angus Gunn shouldn't have a save to make. He shouldn't have much action. Scotland should just dominate the game. They should, but they didn't. And yeah, I think it shows how bad the performance levels have been. And I think if anyone in the Tartan Army or the wider abroad Scotland fans or non-Scotland fans think that Scotland are going to be able to do anything in these next 2 games playing like that, they could be very violently surprised, because I haven't got a lot of confidence going into those next 2 games, to be honest.
No, me neither, as well. And another thing I don't think we've spoken about is the disallowed goal from Belarus. It was ruled out for a foul on Scott McTominay. I think it was a foul, although maybe a little bit soft, but I think he does get impeded. However, shocking defending leading up to that. Especially throughout the whole game, the 2 centre halves were terrible, and they didn't do themselves any favours with that goal either, and it could have been a different story.
Yeah, it could have been. And the goal, as you said, I think it was a foul on Scott McTominay, and ultimately it leads to the goal. But the whole back four really poor for the goal, and really poor throughout the 90 minutes. Well, not the 90 minutes, because obviously Steve Clarke's 2 changes that he made out with the final 10 minutes were defensive changes, which is another issue that we'll probably get onto. But Anthony Ralston doesn't do enough to get back to stop the cross, doesn't stop the cross. Hendry and McKenna are on their heels. The ball rolls across. A terrible cross, actually. Sort of mishits it. It just rolls along the sort of 6 yard line, maybe just behind the penalty area, or the penalty box line, sorry. And then Andy Robertson is on his heels as well, and it's a good finish by the Belarus player. But yeah, that just summed up how bad Scotland were, and they got off the hook at that point, because I probably would have backed them to get another goal. They obviously did. Scott McTominay, they got another goal anyway, but yeah, it would have been a really toxic and sort of off-putting atmosphere, really nervous and flat within the stadium, like it was the whole 90 minutes. And you can't really blame the support, because I think it is difficult to get up for a game like that when you expect to come and see goals and sort of a good performance to round off what should be a successful and promising camp, and it was anything but that, really, and leaves despite the points on the board, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth going into those next 2 games.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I wanted to latch on to your point there about what should have been an exciting camp and a good camp. I think it tells the whole story that we did win both our games, and most of the Scotland fans that are complaining about the way we played, the style of play, and Steve Clarke will get a lot of flack as well, but and we have individually gone through a few of the players, but I think as a team last night as well, they didn't show enough intensity on or off the ball. Um, you know, and obviously the crowd wasn't great last night, but I think that's down to the players to get the crowd involved. And there was just a point I think in the um, it was early in the game, and it was like the ball was back with Angus Gunn, and they were passing it around, and how casually they were moving the ball really struck me. I was thinking, right, I know it's Belarus, but this is a World Cup qualifier. You know, beating 3 points against Belarus is worth the same as 3 points against Greece or Denmark. So come on, guys. you know, up the intensity, show us something. One player who I thought was pretty good, apart from his end product, was Ben Garendok. Ripping the Belarus left back to shreds for the entire game. Although, I thought it was quite funny. We were talking about the quality of Belarus earlier. I don't know if you clocked onto this, Ethan, but the commentators were trying to sort of back it and say, oh, this guy plays in the separate top league, and this guy plays in the top league in Greece and stuff like that, and really good European divisions. And you're thinking, oh, guys, come on.
Yeah, pulling the wool over the viewers' eyes a little bit, I think, with those comments. But no, it was really bad, and there's just it looked like, and I know I put a lot of responsibility onto the manager as we spoke about, but the players need to do more. And ultimately, I don't think Steve Clarke, although I think people could have their opinions, and I possibly agree that sometimes he's a little bit too negative and not as positive and brave as he should be. But I don't think he set his players up to go out and be lackluster and let Belarus dictate the game like they did
No.
in that second half. I fail to see that was his point. So, yeah, I think the players have got to take responsibility on what was a really poor performance. And Scott McTominay was speaking after the game and said as much. And they'll know that they need to lift it for these next two games because they're absolutely massive. And ultimately, we're 2 games away from a World Cup now, very close, but still seems very far.
Yeah, it definitely does. And even if we make it to the World Cup somehow, which right now it's not looking likely, I don't think that it'll be any different from the other tournaments.
No, I've seen nothing in between the European Championships to suggest otherwise. I just don't think this Scotland team or Steve Clarke are brave enough to sort of get results in those one-off games, especially where the sort of initiatives on Scotland to win the games, and that's the real concern because going into that Greece game at Hampden, sorry, Denmark game at Hampden, the last game of the campaign, Denmark will be rolling up saying, okay, well, you need to beat us because we've got the massive goal difference advantage. We don't need to do anything. You need to come here and beat us. And Scotland have obviously struggled with that in the past.
All right, so moving on now to Steve Clarke specifically, Ethan. There's been a lot of people calling him into question. We've spoke about the style of play, the negative style of play, the decisions he keeps making, he picking his favourites. Um, Obviously, it's difficult because we have got the results, but we haven't seen a really good Scotland performance since maybe when we beat Spain. So, do you think Steve Clarke should still be in the Scotland job?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, as you said, because obviously he's got us to 2 major tournaments. He's been the the most, well, capped, would you call it, Scotland manager now. He's managed the most games as Scotland boss after that result in game last night against Belarus. But I do think it's starting to become quite flat, and the performances have shown that. And I can't. I really hope that I'm proven wrong. And the players might come out and we might play really well in these last two games, but I just don't see a scenario where we get enough points. And maybe someone can call me spoiled or whatever, but I don't think it'll ever happen either. So me giving my opinion on it probably doesn't really matter because it's not a big talking point. Well, it is a big talking point because I think a lot of people think that Steve Clarke should be moved on, but I don't think I just really can't see any scenario where he is before the end of the qualifying campaign. And then if he does get us qualified, then before the group stage games are played, and I would say inevitably we're knocked out of the group stages because I just don't think I just don't think we're positive enough as a team to go and win one-off games. And you've seen it. The perfect example was the Hungary game. Who Hungary weren't a great team. They were actually not as good as a team as I thought they were going to be when we actually played them. And they obviously beat us with that really late goal, but we just never created anything. We had all of the ball. Subs took too long to make the subs, and then they obviously got that goal, um, which well sent us out ultimately. And even if we'd got a point, it wouldn't have been enough. We need to win that game, and we didn't. And I'd have no confidence if we got to the World Cup. And some people might be like, well, we've not been a World Cup in over 2 decades and whatever. I just take getting there no matter the scoreline.
Nearly
But
3 decades.
yeah, nearly 3 decades now, of course. But we don't want to be the laughing stock of the tournament. That's what we were at the Euros. Ultimately, I think we were the worst team, and yeah, you want to go and compete because we've got a golden generation. There's no sort of fear in saying that because it's the truth. This is a great team, great Scotland team we've got, and we need to maximise the potential of it. And I don't think we're doing that, and I don't think Steve Clarke's doing that at the moment. Having said that, of course, he's got a lot of credit in the bank with the tournaments he's got us to, but we've performed awfully at the tournaments, and the performances in qualifying have been terrible. And if we were to go into the playoffs, well, we're guaranteed at least the playoffs after last night's result in Copenhagen. Denmark beating Greece 3-1. So Greece are out, Belarus obviously out. So it will be between us and Denmark. We need a point in, or we need to avoid losing away to Greece and then win at home. I don't. If I had to be a realist, I couldn't see that happening. I think Denmark will have too much for us, especially with how they're playing. I think we were quite lucky to get them in the first game, but they seem to be really sort of up to up to pace now. And obviously, I think we've got quite a newish manager. He's not been a manager for too long. So yeah, I don't have much confidence. And in the playoffs, I don't have much confidence either because yeah, we obviously seen how that went the last time when we had to play Ukraine at Hampden and got beat, which was a terrible scenario really because that was a real opportunity to get there and we failed. And I just I know that it's easy to be negative with the two performances we've just seen. It's also easy to be too positive with the points on the board. I think it's difficult to sort of balance it up, but yeah, I know maybe I'm not giving an answer, but I think in my ideal world, someone else comes in for the last two games. But I understand that's never going to happen, and maybe it shouldn't. But it's just been my stance on Steve Clarke for a while now, and I know a lot of people will disagree. But football is about opinions, and I just think that that's my opinion. That I don't think that Steve Clarke can take Scotland and this Scotland squad to levels that maximise the potential of the players we've got.
Yeah, sorry, I just yawned there, but I would agree. I have wanted them gone since the Euros, but unfortunately, I don't see a scenario where the SFA replace him before the World Cup if we qualify. If we don't qualify, maybe maybe they'd pull the trigger on him. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, if we end up qualifying for the World Cup or make the playoffs, I don't see a scenario where the SFA change. Although I would want a change. The question is though as well, who do you bring in to be the new Scotland manager? There's not a lot of candidates out there. Um, Steven Gerrard maybe. No, but we'll get on to him in a bit. But yeah, it's definitely a tough one because we have still got the results so far. But like you said, Ethan, you don't want to be the laughing stock of the tournament again. And I think if we do qualify, which I don't think we will, if we keep playing the way we're playing and get into this tournament, I think it will end up similar, going out in the group stages, unfortunately. And yeah, but I I don't know who you
Yeah.
would bring in, but I just know
Well,
I just know that I don't really want Steve Clark there anymore.
yeah, I completely agree with that. There isn't obviously a standout candidate to come in and replace him. And some Scotland fans will say, well, if you get rid of Steve Clark, then you run the risk of getting someone else in, and then you're not even getting to the European Championships like we were for the last two occasions. But I think things you've got to remember, although Steve Clark was the first Scotland manager to get us to European Championships in a while, he also did have the benefit of the contest or the competition, sorry, being expanded teams wise for the World Cup this year. He has the benefit of the competition being expanded. So the chances are stacked in the favour of him compared to managers previously gone. And I would say we have better players. And that's not taking anything away from Steve Clarke at all, because I think he's done an excellent job as Scotland manager for a long time. But sometimes it's just best for a change, and I think it would be. And I think there will be a change soon. I do think that um, regardless of how this campaign ends up, whether it ends up Scotland making it to the well, okay, maybe if Scotland made it to the last 16 of the quarterfinals and Steve Clarke would stay on. But I think if it ends up with Scotland even making it to the group stages and going out with a whimper again, then I think Steve Clarke will walk away himself. I think he sort of he's came across that way to me that he wants to if he wants to stay, then he needs to show himself that he can show a progression with this team in a tournament by getting to a knockout round of a tournament, because it's not impossible. We've got good players. We've shown that we can
Well,
beat
we should
good
have
teams
done it.
in
We
the
should
past.
have done it in the Euros because
Yeah, we should have done it in
they beat
either
Switzerland
Euros.
and Hungary.
Yeah, we should have done. And Switzerland are a good team. Obviously, Germany can't have too many
I think we were
complaints. We were,
better.
we were,
We were better than Switzerland in that game though, because other than
yeah,
maybe Zerdan Shaqiri's obviously a wonder goal assisted by Anthony Ralston. Uh, I don't really remember them being great. Although I was at the pub at the time, so take that with a pinch of salt. But yeah, I think we should have progressed in that tournament, and I agree with you. You know, we need to see some progression. Um, it's an interesting take there that you said that you think he might walk if he doesn't manage to do that.
yeah. I think he will. I think he'll just see it, and and I know that it's obviously it isn't the maybe what everyone's thinking at the moment. Scotland's so close to the first World Cup in nearly 3 decades, as you said, that if we were to get there, then Steve Clarke would leave after it. But I just think that if we were to perform as poorly as we have done in the last two group stages, where there've been really great opportunities there to get out a group, even going into the last game, despite poor or not great performances in the first two games of the group, we've still had the chance to get out, which shows that the odds are stacked in your favour in the groups nowadays. It's the days gone by of two teams get out of a group, even a third place, you've got a chance to make it. and yeah, we've just not been good enough. And if it was to be the same in the World Cup, I think a lot of Scotland fans, regardless of the fact that Steve Clarke got us there, would feel that what's the point in getting to the tournaments if you're just going to sit and wait to be beaten or wait to get put out? Like, you look at teams like Georgia, for example, last European Championships, they were absolutely excellent. They beat Portugal in the group stages. They scored. They played the eventual winners to be knocked out and actually went 1-0 up against them. And we beat them once and drew with them away and qualifying. There's no reason why we can't do something of a similar fashion. And you look at teams like Norway. We did we beat home and away Norway or draw at home? We certainly obviously beat them away in that.
Did we draw? Was that the 3 each at Hampden?
I think what it might have been. I don't remember beating them twice, but obviously we beat them away, and I think we drew at home. Still,
By that point, we'd already qualified, so we were.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and obviously the difference is we don't have one of the best strikers in the world. But you look at what they've done in qualifying, 6 wins from 6. They are pretty much in the World Cup already,
I know,
and
and we a player who's awful at Rangers is balling out for them. So yeah, we've got a Ballon d'Or nominee who's playing
yeah,
worse than Taylor Asgard.
right. That's maybe a bit of a stretch there, but no, I get your point.
But the national team he is.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's not a stretch. And do you think that a lot of the players are not playing well for the national team because how they're being set up, or do you think they need to take more responsibility as players to play better?
I think it's about both.
Yeah,
I think
I
the
would agree.
setup is poor, but we spoke about in particular last night how poor individually they were, and I think they do need to shoulder more responsibility, and I think the players are getting away with quite a lot because of sort of this love hate relationship the fans have been in with Steve Clarke for the past however many years, because the focus has always been on him,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I think the players do need to take on more responsibility, but I think it's a shared responsibility in the end because I don't think either of them are performing to the best of their abilities and doing what they should in terms of the players on the pitch and Steve Clarke making the managerial decisions.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that.
Okay. Uh, Unless you've got any more Scotland points, um, I've got a little bit of Celtic news, and then we'll talk about the Rangers managerial situation.
Yeah, I'm not getting any more points to make on Scotland, and
Yeah.
just hoping that when we come into the next break, we play a little bit better and give ourselves confidence, not only get qualified for the World Cup because it's in our hands, and I think we're very capable of doing it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I don't think it is. I think it's still a massive task on Steve Clarke and the players' hands, but we've got the tools to get there, and hopefully the performances match the scorelines, and we can take real confidence into the summer's tournament and have real belief in our nation at a tournament for the first time in a while.
Yeah, yeah. My Celtic news is Alistair Johnston has returned to training at Lennoxtown ahead of schedule. Obviously, he won't be back in the squad too soon because I'd imagine it's a bit of rehabilitation for him as well. I mean, Dujon Sterling's been training on the grass for about 3 months and he's still nowhere near returning to the Rangers team. But, Alistair Johnston was maybe expected to not be at that stage until December, January. But it'll be good for Celtic to get him back. Although Colby Donovan's impressed, I think we have seen as well his inexperience and his age. His age is showing a little bit, and obviously Anthony Ralston isn't good enough to start every single game for Celtic. So Ethan, I'd imagine you'll be pleased that Johnston seems to be making an early recovery.
Yeah, as good, and that's been the sort of talk the whole time that Alistair Johnson was doing really well in his recovery and he was making steps to be back before we expected him to. Obviously, it was that Kairat Almaty first leg at Celtic Park where he went off with the hamstring injury, and I don't think that's probably helped Celtic's performance levels at all because um, he obviously a massive part of the team, not only defensively but going forward. I think he had over 10 assists or something like that last season. So yeah, he'll be a massive boost for Brendan Rodgers when he does eventually come back. But yeah, I don't think he's too close. I think, as you said, I think he's still probably a few weeks away at the very least. But it's good to hear that probably one of the best players in the Scottish Premiership's nearly back fit.
Yeah, it is really good news, and I think as well maybe if you're talking about impacting Celtic's overall play, I think losing Greg Taylor and then losing him to injury at the start of the season, sort of simultaneously losing two of the key components from Celtic's success over the past few years has impacted them massively. And although I'm not going to deny how good Kieran Tierney is, right? But it's funny. I think Greg Taylor is better at that role.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would completely agree with that. I think Greg Taylor's a better player. Kieran, not a better player in general, but a better player in that sort of inverted role. And yeah, I don't think that's really controversial to say. I would completely agree with that. I think Kieran Tierney is more your sort of traditional fullback. Gets up and down, gets to the byline, puts some crosses in, and I think Kieran Tierney's maybe not blown anybody away. I think some of his performances have been not great, but I think some of them have also been positive. So it's kind of mixed. And Marcelo Saracchi looks like a really good pickup from Celtic as well. I know it's only a loan deal from Boca Juniors, and probably with how he's playing, being recalled to the Uruguay national team, and I believe I seen he was made captain as well. I think.
What
So his
Uruguay?
value, yeah,
What?
yeah. I don't know if that was all the rubbish, but apparently
Is Valverde injured or
no, I don't know if it was just like I imagine it was just like a small cameo. He was possibly captain. I might be talking absolute rubbish though, so take it with a pinch of salt. But anyway, we'll deal with the facts. He was definitely recalled to the Uruguay national team by Marcelo Bielsa. So I imagine his value will be up. So might be quite difficult for Celtic to sort of exercise a purchase of him. But he's definitely been a really decent signing. But
obviously
no, it was.
obviously he's not a better player than Kieran Tierney overall, but do you think he's better in that role?
Oh yeah, definitely, hands down, not a debate. And yeah, I think there is a debate on whether he maybe is the best left back answer going forward for Celtic. It's a good sort of dilemma to have, and obviously you have lost the sort of familiarness you can say of Greg Taylor. He knows that system very well. He's obviously very experienced at the club. Obviously, Kieran Tierney is as well, but he's not as good in that sort of inverted role as we know. Marcelo Saracchi, I would say, is probably along the same lines. But it was a really good point you made that from last season, Celtic have lost their two starting fullbacks. One obviously through their own doing with the transfer, and then one unfortunate circumstances. But
Well, you
yeah,
could also argue it's through Celtic's doing as well, bringing in Tierney instead, and
no,
not
yeah, no, yeah, no, no.
not
That's what I said. That's what I said. I said that was through. That was. I thought the Greg Taylor one was through
Oh,
Celtics.
I thought you were talking about Celtic's own doing.
Yeah,
No,
no, I thought
sorry, no, Greg Taylor's own doing. Oh God, this is a
no,
disaster.
no. No,
Uh,
no, I was no, I was just no, I was agreeing with you. I thought it was
yeah.
Celtic. They could have done more to sort of support Greg Taylor and and make him feel still welcome at Celtic. Obviously, wanted to move on that as well. So, and then I was just saying, obviously, Alistair Johnson, not really much he can do about a hamstring injury. Unfortunate it happens, and hopefully he can come back and be as good as he has been for Celtic. And obviously, he'll have aspirations to be at the World Cup with Canada as well. So, yeah, it's really good news for Celtic and obviously the Canadian national team as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I saw Jesse Marsh was talking about that, and I think he wanted to try and get him involved in the friendlies in November, which would be good news for that. So, Yeah. So now moving on to the Rangers managerial search after a number of positive talks with the club, looking like Steven Gerrard would make his return to Ibrox. He turned them down for the second time in 6 months. Ethan, what did you make of that?
Yeah, it really did. It surprised me because I think when he was in talks, I thought it was a great opportunity for him more than Rangers, I would say, because obviously where he's been in his recent two appointments, not going very well at Al Ettifaq and Aston Villa. So I thought that it'd be a great opportunity for him to come home. You could say a place he knows well. Obviously, he had success, and although he did leave the club mid-season and turned them down as you referenced to in the summer, possibly there is no. I think there was still definitely a place in the fans' hearts for Steven Gerrard after this. I don't think so, and I can't be 100% sure on why he's not took the role, but I think it might be something to do with that he's still got money to obviously earn from his contract he had with Al Ettifaq, and I think we obviously know Saudi money is crazy compared to pretty much every other league in the world, and especially a league like Scotland. And he was probably wanting compensation from that the money he would miss out on by Rangers, and you could possibly understand if Rangers weren't willing to pay that. And that's all just speculation, but I think when the opportunity opened up to Steven Gerrard, it was one I just didn't see him turning down, and that's the only sort of reason I could think of. And obviously, it was going to be a different approach by the 49ers, I think, because the sort of looking at a manager who's came off of a successful-ish spell in Russell Martin, and a manager for the future. And Steven Gerrard, obviously, still a very young coach, but off the back of a couple unsuccessful spells, I think it would have been a little bit of a change in the sort of direction that they were trying to head. Although it would have won a lot of supporters back, having started the season poorly, and the 49ers obviously being blamed for some of that. But I think they'll go with who I fancied them to go with from the start, Danny Rowe. I think it's a similar appointment to Russell Martin. They'll just be hoping it's a more successful one.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to latch on to a point you made about Steven Gerrard. They would have been welcomed back by the supporters, but you mentioned after this you don't think so, and I totally agree. I think he's burned all his bridges now. Um, leaving mid-season, he was forgiven for that. Turned them down, he was forgiven for that. But the fact he's done it again, he's led Rangers on, led the supporters on, and I think the supporters wouldn't be willing to go through that again. Of oh, he's coming back, and then they just be like, nah, all paper talk, that kind of thing. So I think Gerrard, yeah, he's burned all his bridges, and I don't think there's a scenario where he can come back to Rangers in the near future. Anyway, as for Danny Rowe, he's an interesting choice. He had a 40% win percentage at Sheffield Wednesday. More losses than wins as well. I know that might be self-explanatory, but a lot of people forget there's usually draws in there as well also. But the job he did in that club that is an absolute mess, I think is really good. Obviously, he knows Gassama. I saw a little clip of an interview from Barry Bannon saying he would back Danny Rowe to make a good impact in Scotland. Obviously, Barry Bannon's a bit of a somewhat controversial figure up here for a few people, but he said obviously he played under him, and what Barry Bannon's done, just on a wee side note, what he's done sticking with his club through these times, I think is really good from him. But yeah, Danny Rowe's definitely an interesting candidate. He's really young though, and I know that we talk about players and if you're good enough, you're old enough, that kind of thing. but I just think it's different, kind of shouldering the responsibility of being the Rangers manager. He's 36. To put that into perspective, if Leon Balogun was still there, Balogun would be older. So it's a wee that might be a really strange thing for me to get hung up on, but that's maybe one of my concerns about him. Although I don't know anything about him as a person, so he might be the most, you know, the best leader of all time, and he might love the responsibility, and he might be able to take that on. But once again, as well, it's a different. Obviously, we're talking about he's done well in a terrible scenario at Sheffield Wednesday. But going from Sheffield Wednesday, obviously his last job, to Rangers is a big step, big change in culture and expectations, and everything. So yeah, I'm not I'm not 100% sold on Danny Rowe, and this might counter because obviously I think the next manager I'm going to mention that I've actually I want him to be the next manager. I think he's quite young as well, so it might counteract my current state. Yeah, he's pretty young as well, so I think he's maybe ages with Leon Balogun, but it might make me come across as a little hypocrite here. But I quite like the Kieran McKenna links, Ethan. What he's done with Ipswich. I don't know if he would leave Ipswich for Rangers. Obviously, if you look at it from the outside, that's a no-brainer. But he's been there for a while. He's taken them through in a project. Obviously, they got relegated last season from the Premier League, but I'd say Ipswich fans and him would probably fancy their chances at making another run at promotion. But for me, I think he's one of the better candidates that have been floated about. He's not a manager that's been sacked recently either, or obviously Danny Rowe wasn't sacked. He had to leave because of the financial issues at Sheffield Wednesday, because he probably wasn't getting paid. I'm not 100% on that, but yeah, I think a manager that's still in it, if we're able to poach Kieran McKenna from Ipswich Town, I think that would be a great appointment, because the other ones like Michael Carrick and Ralph Hasenhüttl, who has been revealed to be a bit crazy, I think they're good managers in their own right, but McKenna for me is the standout candidate.
Yeah, that's fair enough to say. And I think it would be difficult to sort of convince him away from Ipswich because they obviously, as you said, he was in the Premier League with them last season. He's got previous of getting them promoted, and they are only 2 point. I know it's a long season, still so long to play so much football, especially in the English Championship. But they're only 2 points outside the playoffs, and I think it's the same story for someone maybe like a Frank Lampard at Coventry, who obviously top of the Championship now. I think the rumours as well that he was sort of they picked was it Philip Clement they picked over Frank Lampard when he was maybe rumoured to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's also that maybe dilemma that he would want to.
Also, as well, though, I think at that point that was probably a wise decision because Clement, although I think he did get sacked, he'd just come off the back of managing Monaco, and Lampard was
Yeah,
pretty.
no, but I wasn't saying it was a bad decision because obviously it's difficult to say that Frank Lampard would have been able to make a different story to what Clement had made. But I was just saying that maybe Frank Lampard would think, oh, I don't want to go to Rangers because they rejected me in the past or whatever. But I think it is difficult it's impossible to sort of convince current Premier League managers, but it's still very difficult, sorry, to convince current Championship managers, especially ones who are in that upper echelon of the league with aspirations of promotion to the big league with the biggest money pot in European football, certainly. And yeah, I think that would be difficult. Whereas Danny Rowe obviously no longer in the job role at Sheffield Wednesday, but as you said, he done a really solid job there in really difficult circumstances. But it is a completely different shift. We haven't seen him at a club as the first team manager where he's been expected to win every game, win league titles, challenge for league titles, and that'll be a switch. But obviously, every manager needs to take a jump at one point, and it would be a really good opportunity for him to possibly come up to Glasgow and show why he has been such a highly rated manager by some of the players that have played under him. Barry Bannon, as you mentioned, Josh Windass, obviously former Rangers forward. He also speaks very highly of him. So, yeah, he's definitely a manager with promise. But I think I did think at the time, and I think you were sort of the same thought that although a lot of people didn't think Russell Martin was a good appointment, that we could see the sort of upside of it, and obviously it didn't pan out that way. So it is very difficult to get these appointments right. And I would agree with the point you made about his age, possibly. And I don't know if that really affects the players, but obviously, as a young manager, and there's difficult characters in that Rangers squad, as we know. Nico Raskin, obviously. I think Barry Ferguson came out and said he's not always been the sort of easiest to deal with, and that may be echoed by Russell Martin and obviously the sort of fallout that they had. So yeah, it would take a massive character to go into that Rangers squad and really sort of demand the performances that a club like Rangers fans demand, because that we're obviously miles off the mark under Russell Martin. So, but I think Danny Rowe will be in charge, and I think it'll be a really interesting appointment that could go really well for Rangers, but it also, in the same vein, could go really poorly. But I think that's going to happen with whatever manager you hire.
I'm getting deja vu here.
Yeah, yeah, I can see why you are, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a risk with whatever manager they employ, isn't there? So,
Yeah, I suppose. But I think that'll do it for today's episode of the Dugout. It's been a good one. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Talking over Scotland and Rangers, a lot of exciting things going on right now in the world of Scottish football, and my little weird 3 minutes or whatever it was on Florian Tovan. But yeah, thank you to everyone for watching and or listening. If you're listening on Spotify, go check out the YouTube, the Dugout. If you're on YouTube, go check out the Spotify, the Dugout podcast. Make sure to follow the TikTok. It's just the Dugout on TikTok. Follow the Twitter at the Dugout 2024. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us ramble about football. Thank you and goodbye.